All right, welcome to this lesson where we're going to continue on, and specifically we're going to get this hero section right here animating properly. All right, so we're going to come down all the way to our main function that's going to load all the other functions, and we're going to call a function that doesn't yet exist called animate words. Okay, so let's come out here and just above the init render loop function, we're going to do a function of animate words. Okay, so in here we're going to create a constant. Let me zoom up. Const words equals, we're going to do romance. Sorry. Also rings and relationships. Okay, now we're also going to define a current index, because we need to know what is the current word that's currently being displayed. So let current index equals 0 by default. We're going to also specify let split, because we're going to be using split type on these. You'll see how this comes into play in a second. And then we're going to do a const of text element, because we need access to it, equals document query selector. This is going to be primary h1 span. And again, if we look at the HTML and we find that area, let's just do a search. There it is. It is right here. So primary h1 and then the span. Okay. So now that we have those four elements, we're going to create two more functions inside of this function. So the first function is going to be to update the text. So function update text. Inside of here, we're going to say text element, which is defined right here, dot text content method equals words current index. All right, so the current index is right here. This is an array, and so we pass in current index to get, what is essentially the current index, one of these three elements. By default, it will be romance because that's 0, and this is current index 0. After we have that, then we're going to split type it with split type. So split equals new split type, text element, and just a type of chars, because we want each individual character to animate. After that, we're going to call another function that doesn't yet exist called animate chars, and we're going to pass in split chars, which we gained above. And then we finally take current index equals current index plus 1. All right, and then percentage words dot length. Now this is going to basically increment our current index plus 1, obviously based on the length right here, which in this case is 0, 1, 2. And obviously you don't want it to keep on increasing this index to anything beyond 2, which is what this bit at the end will prevent us from doing. Okay, so finally animate chars, and we pass in the characters. And again, in this parameter chars is right here, split dot chars. And again, this should be familiar to you since we've done this multiple times throughout this course so far. So now we just do a gsap from call. We pass in chars. We put a y% here of 100. So we're going from basically the bottom, and then it's going to go to its default position at the y% is 0. So we take stagger of 0.03, a duration of 1.5, an ease of power 4 out. And we also want to put an onComplete function here, where we're going to say if split dot revert. All right, so split dot revert basically removes the DOM elements that were created on the split type function, because if you look at the developer console, when split type is used, and like our span element, like if I show you right here, our span element, the HTML will no longer look like this. It's going to look like a bunch of elements for each character. But in order for us to effectively change the type, we have to revert it back to this version, which is what revert does. It's specific to the split type library, that revert method. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, so now that we have that, we can then call, because remember, function update text and animate chars, these are just functions. We haven't called them yet. But we want to call them based on a certain interval, a time interval. So we use set interval. We'll say update text, and then every 3 seconds we'll change that word. So every 3 seconds it calls update text, it runs this, and then this function calls this function right here each time as well. Hopefully that is starting to make sense for you. We did go ahead and call animate words, which is the new function. Let's see if it actually works. Almost. So now I'm going to need to make sure I take a look at what's happening here. So if I refresh, starts off with the relationships, that's the default one. Then it goes to index 0 of romance. All right, so I found the issue, and really it was my autocomplete, I think, my code completion. This should not be from to, it should be simply from. There we go. So save that. We'll come back out here. You'll see it come into place. Very, very cool. And you'll see it go and change. Next one, relationships. Now, one thing you were going to notice that I do not like, you'll see a little bit of shift occur. So this is the revert function getting called. And so I know you can fix this. I had a hard time fixing that, but that's something perhaps that you can work on your own. I know we can fix this issue, but it just happens when we place that revert call. But yeah, no big huge deal anyhow. But this is pretty good. I think it's a good point to almost stop, but you know what? I do want to get real quickly our smooth scroll set up, and that's a very simple thing to do. So let's also set up smooth scroll. So if I come down here, just underneath here, we're going to set up our set up smooth scroll function. And again, this is the same code we've been using for our smooth scroll forever. And then so we're just going to call it right here. So set smooth scroll. Save that. Let's go back to our browser. Let's check this out. And now we have our nice smooth scroll. Now, one thing that you want to do is right here, the value of this. If I let this sit here for a while, we're going to see it probably wrap back around the other side of the ring, because right now we might be in the middle of it, or it might, there it is, so right there. So in order to fix that, because I noticed that was an issue on my original project, which I mentioned earlier, you want to take that Z right here and we want to push it to something further, probably like 3.5, just to make sure that if somebody sits here at this area, it's not going to affect them too much. So now, if we let this sit for a while, we should not see the other part of it wrap around, which you definitely wouldn't want. Okay, so looks like we're good to go now in that regard. And now in the next lesson, we will go ahead and continue on, and we'll work on this inspection section and this precision section as well.